Hello guys, welcome to the episode where we give our projectiles a lifespan. So there's one problem we need to solve before we actually give them a lifespan, and by lifespan I mean like once they, you know, fire approximately 3.5 tiles, they travel 3.5 tiles, then they need to disappear. So before we can actually solve that problem, we need to actually make them move in the direction that they're fired. So that's one problem we're solving. The second problem, I already said, we're going to remove them, these projectiles, when they've reached the end of their lifespan. And finally, there's a hard limit on the Polar Star where it can only have 2 projectiles on screen at any one time. I'm pretty sure. That's what I gathered from the wiki. So, and from playtesting, I couldn't get 3 on screen at once, but I wasn't sure if that was just timing or whatever. Anyway, so our solution is to go and create an update function for our projectiles, and it's going to take an elapsed time and then just update on velocity. I think it's about 0.6 gain units per millisecond, or velocity units. And if the offset is greater than 3.5, this is the second problem we'll be solving. We're going to need to delete it. And finally, we'll go into our start fire and our Polar Star in particular, and make sure that we only ever have 2 projectiles on screen. And the way we're going to do this is just to have two, like a projectile A and a projectile B. And it might seem like really not very abstract, but we aren't making an abstract game, we're making a concrete game. So we don't need to worry too much about abstractions. And then later on, when we work on the machine gun and stuff, we'll see other ways of limiting our projectiles and not worrying about so much about managing 2 projectiles. But this isn't a big deal, so yeah, let's get started. So let's start on our player.cc and work down again. So go to player.cc, and I'm going to go to the update method so that we can update our Polar Star's projectiles. So let's see, where's update? Should be up here, yeah. So yeah, I don't really care where. Here's good. Polar Star, let's call it update projectiles. We're not really updating our Polar Star. That doesn't really make sense because our Polar Star doesn't get updated, but it's projectiles too. So I'm going to call it update projectiles. And it's going to need an elapsed time in milliseconds, so let's pass it that. And go into our Polar Star and create that method. So polarstar.h to start with, and cc to continue it. So let's do it right above draw. Call it void update projectiles, taking in an elapsed time. And implement it in polarstar.cc above draw. This is just going to say if, again, we have to check to make sure that the projectile exists like we did for drawing, because sometimes it's not there. So if the projectile exists, then we can do projectile update, giving it elapsed time. And again, we have to actually implement this update method in our projectile class. So I'm just kind of working down. So void update, taking in elapsed time. And this is just going to update our offset. And then we can then calculate where to use our offset to. So down here below, or above our draw, we can do our update. So let's see. Okay, so let's define our velocity up at the top for projectile. So projectile velocity, const units of velocity, k projectile speed equals 0.6 f, I think I decided. I don't really know. That one's iffy for me, so if you want to play around with that, that's fine. So update, we're going to say our offset should plus equals our elapsed time times our velocity. I'll do it in this order because that's what we usually do. K projectile velocity. No, I think I called it speed. Yes, I did. Good guess. Okay, so now we need to actually draw in our offset too. And this is going to be different depending on which direction we're facing, which direction we're traveling. So I'm going to make a new X and Y. So units of game X, we'll set it to X, and Y, we'll do the same thing for Y. And then we'll just do another series of switch statements. So switch based on our vertical facing, how about our vertical direction. If vertical direction, no, sorry, case, horizontal, break, up, break, down, break, and default, break. Okay, so if our vertical direction is horizontal, then we need to update our X instead of our Y. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be using this new X and this new Y down here, so be sure to change those. So X is going to be plus equal, if we're going to the left. So let's do a switch on horizontal direction. So if horizontal direction is left, otherwise, if horizontal direction is left, then we want to do X plus equals offset, sorry, minus equals offset. Otherwise, we want to do plus equals offset. So I can rewrite this, and I will in a second, but I'll let you look at it as it is now, and I'll rewrite it up here. So X plus equals horizontal direction equals left, then negative offset, otherwise positive offset. So that's that. If we're going up, then we need to subtract our offset. And if we're going down, we need to add our offset. Again, up is in the negative direction. So let's see how this looks. And I think if I'm correct, we should be able to get a firing polar star animating projectile words, F5 to run it. And I'll bring it over so we can see it. So I'll fire up, and it fires off screen, which is awesome. It doesn't collide with anything, but it still looks cool. And then every time I press X, it resets the projectile. So the projectile that exists gets deleted, and a new projectile is created where we are currently at. So yeah, this looks good to me. Now we need to worry about the projectile's lifespan. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to have this update method in our polar star projectile return a Boolean. And this is just going to flag whether or not we are still alive. Returns true if we are alive. This is still alive, so that we can know when we need to be deleted, and the owner of us can delete us. So let's return a bool, and let's return the offset is less than our k projectile max offset. And I'll define that to be in units of game. Let's copy it so I don't have to remember it. And this will be 7 half tiles times units k half tile. All right, so oh yeah, that should be an underscore. So we're still alive if our offset is less than this k projectile max offset, which is again about 3.5 tiles. So now we can go up to our projectile update, or update projectiles and check to see if our update returned true or false. So if it didn't return true, then we need to reset our projectile. So if not that, then projectile.reset. And that should be all we need to implement a lifespan. So yeah, let's try it out. Building, running. Okay, let's see. So I'll go over here and fire it. And it looks like it lasts about 3.5 tiles, which is perfect. Just check all the directions. Oh, I'm so happy with this. Okay, one more thing I want to do, and that is handling the 2 projectiles. Okay, 2 more things I want to do, and that is handling 2 projectiles at once and not being able to fire if there is already 2 projectiles on screen. So let's start with the second problem, not being able to fire. To do this, let's go into our start fire. And all we need to do is say if projectile, if there is a projectile, then return. We don't do anything. And I think that will fix our problem of firing when there's another bullet in the air already. Yep, so I'm trying to press more than once and only 1 bullet at a time. Now let's increase it to 2 bullets at a time. So let's go down to projectile. And we'll change this projectile to projectile A and make a projectile B as well. So we'll need to fix some stuff in our polarstar.cc, but it shouldn't be too hard. So first of all, let's just go wherever we find our first projectile. So first one is update projectiles. So let's change this to projectile A, all of these to projectile A. And then we can just copy and paste it for projectile B. With BG. Okay, so now let's find the next projectile. Same thing with draw. We can just do A, and then copy it for B. Next one. Okay, so now here we can just do if projectile A or projectile and projectile B. Return. So if both of them are in the air already, don't do anything because we don't have a free projectile. So the first one we'll check is if we have projectile A available, then we'll fill projectile A. Oh, here, let's think about this a little bit more. Okay, so we want to figure out which of the 2 is free, projectile A or projectile B. We know one of them is free. We don't know if both of them are free. So let's oh, that seems kind of complicated to make a reference. I don't want to explain that. Okay, so yeah, let's just do an if statement. If projectile A, then projectile A dot reset. Otherwise, if it's projectile B, we need to do projectile B dot reset. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with that. That was good enough. Make sure to do else if so you don't end up with 2 projectiles on the screen at once that are identical. That'd be a hard bug to find. Okay, let's see if there are any more references, and I don't think that there are, so I'm going to build and run, make sure that this works. So I'm firing and nothing's happening, so I'm guessing I did something wrong. Oh yeah, so what I meant to say is if not projectile A and not projectile B. My bad. Okay, so this projectile A, we need to make sure that it doesn't exist before we reset it. And same thing for projectile B. We know one of them doesn't exist, but we don't know which one. So build and run again. And it looks like I can get 2 bullets on it once, and no more than that. So I'm pretty dang happy with how this turned out. Next episode, we'll be working on collisions with our map tiles and then collisions with our bat. So that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching and happy developing.